Sometimes you walk into a place and feel the shape of it before anything begins. The lights are soft. The chairs are already set in careful rows. A small stage waits at the front of the room. Nothing here looks strict. Nothing looks forced. Everything feels calm and welcoming. People arrive slowly. Coats come off. Bags slide under chairs. A few quiet greetings pass between strangers. Someone offers a warm smile. Someone else nods politely and sits down. The room fills in a quiet and gentle way. Along the walls, there are posters with simple messages. Be open, be kind, trust the process. The words are easy to read. The tone is warm, the kind of language that makes people relax a little. A low voice plays from the speakers. Soft music that sits quietly in the background. Not loud enough to take attention. Just enough to smooth the silence while people wait. Most people sit facing the stage. Some lean back. Some lean forward. A few people look around the room like they are trying to understand the space before anything starts. Others already look settled, as if they have been here before and know how things usually go. A person walks across the stage and adjusts a microphone. Another places a small stack of papers on a table. These small movements happen calmly, like parts of a routine everyone already understands. Soon, a voice welcomes the room. The tone is gentle and friendly. It thanks everyone for coming. It speaks about growth, about support, about being in a safe place where people can learn something important together. The words sound caring, the kind of words that make people feel looked after. Heads begin to nod. A few quiet smiles appear across the rows. Nothing here feels like a rule. No one raises their voice. No one tells people what they must do. Instead, there are small suggestions, gentle reminders, simple ideas about how to listen, how to speak, how to respect the space. People follow these ideas easily. Hands stay quiet in laps. Eyes move toward the stage when the speaker talks. When the room laughs, the laughter spreads quickly, like it was waiting for permission. If you sit quietly and watch long enough, something small begins to appear. Everyone moves in a similar way. People nod at the same moments. They fall silent at the same moments too. No one explains the pattern. No one points it out. But slowly the room begins to move together, like a group that already knows the steps before the music begins. This is where Jung would start to look a little closer, not at the stage, not at the posters on the wall. He would watch the small things people do without thinking. A room like this is built to feel safe. The words are gentle. The tone is calm. Everything says the same quiet message. You are welcome here. You are understood here. You belong here. And most people want that feeling very much. Jung believed every person carries parts of themselves they do not like to see. Feelings that feel messy, doubt, anger, fear, the wish to be right, the wish to be better than others. These parts do not disappear, they just move out of sight. He called this hidden place the shadow. In a room like this, the shadow does something interesting. It becomes very quiet. Not because it is gone, but because everyone is trying to be the kind of person the room seems to ask for. People smile a little longer than usual. They nod when the speaker talks about kindness. They agree when someone says the group is special. These are not lies, but they are not the whole truth either. Jung noticed that when many people gather around the same ideas, the shadow often slips into the background together. Doubts are not spoken. Questions feel slightly out of place. No one says you must stay quiet. But the room slowly teaches what fits and what does not. The strange thing is that most people do not feel forced. They feel relieved. If the group already knows what is good, what is healthy, what is positive, then the hard work of looking inside yourself becomes easier to avoid. The messy thoughts can stay hidden. The uncomfortable feelings can stay buried. The group holds a cleaner version of you. Jung believed this is one of the quiet powers of shared belief. A crowd can create a mirror that only shows the parts people want to see. The darker parts fade into the background, not because they disappeared, but because no one is looking there. And when everyone agrees to look in the same direction, the shadow becomes very patient. It waits just outside the warm light of the room. This is where Nietzsche would begin to listen carefully to the language in the room. Not the long speeches, not the big ideas. He would listen to the small words people repeat again and again, words like good, healthy, positive, supportive, safe. In a place like this, these words appear often. They sound simple and kind. No one argues with them. In fact, most people agree very quickly. And that is exactly what would make Nietzsche curious. He believed people often feel comfort when the line between right and wrong becomes very clear. When a group agrees on what is good, life suddenly feels easier to understand. You know where to stand, you know what to say, you know which side feels safe. But Nietzsche noticed something else about groups that share the same moral language. Certainty can grow very quickly. When one person says something is good, it sounds like an opinion. When a whole room says it together, it begins to sound like a rule. No one needs to announce the rule. It slowly appears through agreement. If someone speaks with confidence about being positive, the room nods. If someone questions the idea, the room becomes slightly quieter. Not angry, just uncertain. It is a small change in the air. People do not always notice it happening, but the group begins to understand which thoughts fit easily inside the room and which ones feel a little out of place. Nietzsche believed this is how morality can quietly grow inside a crowd. Not through force, but through comfort. When many people share the same language of goodness, the group begins to feel like it already knows the right way to think. Soon, the words become more than ideas. They become signals. If you speak in the language of the group, people relax. If you speak outside that language, the room grows careful. No one says you are wrong. No one asks you to leave. But the feeling is there. The strange part is that everyone still believes the room is completely open. People say this place welcomes every voice, every perspective, every experience. And maybe that is true. But Nietzsche would quietly watch how the room reacts when someone steps just a little outside the shared idea of what good is supposed to look like. This is where Machiavelli would stop listening to the kind words for a moment. He would not focus on what the room says it believes. He would watch what the room actually produces, who becomes important here, who gains attention, who gains trust. In a place like this, the language is warm. People speak about care, about growth, about helping each other become better. These ideas sound gentle and generous. But Machiavelli believed power rarely disappears. It simply changes its clothing. So instead of asking whether the message is kind, he would ask a quieter question. Who benefits from the message? On the stage, certain voices are louder than others, not in volume, but in attention. When they speak, the room listens closely. Heads turn. Pens move across notebooks. Phones lift to record the moment. These people slowly become guides inside the space. They explain what the ideas mean. They explain what progress looks like. They explain how people should think about success, struggle, or doubt. No one calls them rulers. No one calls them leaders in a strict sense. But the room begins to move around them. People quote their words later in conversations. They repeat certain phrases. They describe their experiences using the same language the speakers use. Machiavelli would notice something simple here. Influence often grows where people are searching for direction. In a room full of people who want to improve themselves, the person who explains the path becomes very powerful. And the power does not look like control. It looks like guidance. It looks like support. It looks like someone helping you see the right way forward. But if you watch carefully, the structure becomes clearer. Some voices shape the ideas, others receive them. Some people set the direction of the conversation. Others follow the path already drawn. Again, nothing here feels forced. No one demands obedience. No one punishes disagreement. Yet slowly the space organizes itself. Certain people speak more. Certain people listen more. Certain ideas travel across the room quickly, while other thoughts remain quiet. Machiavelli would not call this evil. He would simply recognize it. Where many people gather around the same belief, power begins to take a seat in the room. This is where Hill would begin to listen for something very specific, not the rules, not the structure of the room. He would listen for the promise, because in places like this, a promise is never far away. At first it sounds simple. Someone on the stage speaks about possibility, about the future, about the idea that something better is waiting just ahead. The words are hopeful. They feel warm. They suggest that everyone in the room has more inside them than they realize. Hill believed this kind of message has a special power when many people hear it together. Hope becomes louder in a crowd. When one person hears a promise, it may sound interesting. When hundreds of people hear the same promise at the same time, the feeling becomes stronger. Heads begin to nod. The room leans forward. The idea starts to feel real. This is the moment Hill would pay attention to, because belief often grows faster when it is shared. People begin to imagine the future being described, a better life, a clearer path, a version of themselves that feels stronger, more successful, more certain. The promise does not need to be very detailed. In fact, it often works better when it stays simple. If you follow the process, if you trust the system, if you stay committed, then something good will happen. Hill understood that belief works like a quiet engine. Once people begin to trust the idea, they start to supply the energy themselves. They repeat the message to each other during breaks. They talk about the possibilities. They encourage one another to stay positive and committed. The room begins to reinforce the promise on its own. No one forces belief. It spreads gently through conversation, through shared excitement, through the feeling that everyone around you sees the same future. Soon, the promise becomes part of the atmosphere of the room. People feel it when the speaker talks. They feel it when the crowd applauds. They feel it when someone stands up and shares a story about how their life is already changing. Hill would notice that this is the moment trust becomes strongest. Not when people understand everything, but when many people decide to believe together, even before they know where the promise will lead.